So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa la aqibatu lil muttaqeen, wa la udwana illa ala al-zalimin. والصلاة والسلام والأتمان الأكملان على سيد الأولين والآخرين وسيد الأنبياء وإمام المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, we received a lot of positive feedback from the last session. This is a series that we have been thinking about doing and planning for a very long time. It's been nearly 3 years since I've been here in Austin, and the moment I got here, I wanted to do a series like this, because as we established last time, this is a fundamental, really important aspect of our religion. And as with all things, right? When kids his age get to be the age of Salah, and you do the due diligence and teach them how to pray, and eventually teach them how to fast, and teach them how to behave in the masjid without interrupting their dad. So we all kind of do this. For some weird reason, though, in the Muslim community, there's little, if not any, guidance given on preparation for marriage. And that's an odd thing because, number one, it is an act of worship. It's an act of ibadah. And as we established last time as well, it's not just any old act of worship, it's half of one's deen. It's half of one's religion. So we're looking forward to another informative and important session today. We have a lot of, I think, really interesting things to talk about today. Last time we talked about we talked about, by the way, Dudu is Urdu for milk, so it's lunchtime, as he's making abundantly clear to all of us. Last time was all about kind of developing yourself and working on yourself. We want to pivot a bit from there and build upon what we talked about last time. And how do you prepare yourself for someone else? And then when you're at the stage of looking for your other half, what exactly is it that you should be focused on? What do you look for? So we'll cover a bunch of things ranging from detaching from your ego, being accepting of Allah's plan, and following the path that Allah has laid out for you, and being very intentional, being very methodical about figuring out what you want and what you need and what to look for, especially in the aftermath of something potentially not working out. How does one react to that, right? And so by and large, one could have one of two sort of pathways in terms of reaction. Either you think of that scenario as, I'm not good enough, I'm not worth marrying, this is Allah's sign that there's a problem, I'm bad, Allah's punishing me. This is one kind of pathway. The other pathway, which is what we're going to emphasize today, is the pathway of what is known in our religion as having hilm. Hilm is ha, lam, and mim. It's a virtue, it's a quality that's talked about quite a bit in the Quran and Sunnah. So I want to begin with this. There is at least 1 year in the Prophet's lifetime, though some scholars mention that this was a number of years, 2 or 3 years, that was named by later scholars as Aam al-Wufud. Aam al-Wufud. So wufud is plural of wafad. Wafad is like a delegation. So once Islam started becoming sort of more spread in the Arabian Peninsula, delegations from different tribes around the peninsula of Arabia came to Medina to pledge their allegiance to the Prophet ﷺ. So they came one by one. Some narrations mention 60 tribes came in a year, some mention less, some mention more. But one of those tribes came very, very enthusiastically to Medina. So they traveled very, very far to get there. As soon as they arrived in Medina, they went straight to the masjid. Right? So you can imagine traveling in the desert for days and weeks. You arrive, you're disheveled, you're covered with traces of travel, and they all just kind of showed up, right? They've got sand on them, their hair's everywhere. They're just kind of now in the masjid, like tracking the sand, tracking the mud, and just wanting to meet the Prophet. And it was well intentioned, by the way. It was well intentioned, like they came really enthusiastically for that purpose. But there was one individual among them that was more deliberate with his approach. He arrives at Medina, he takes a stop somewhere, he freshens up, takes a bath, shower, puts on new clothes, puts on scent, combs his hair, and comes presentable to the Prophet ﷺ. And upon seeing this, very famously, the Prophet remarked, ﷺ, that inna fikum khaslatan, that indeed in you are two qualities. Yuhibbuha Allah. Yuhibbuhuma Allah. Allah loves these two things. He says, number one, you have al-hilm, which is forbearance. Hilm is kind of like patience, but patience on steroids. So being patient is one thing, but hilm is having this sort of like repose and good opinion of Allah, right? Not panicking, accepting of Allah's fate. It's one step above patience. Patience is in the moment, like I'm gonna have sabr in the moment. But hilm is thinking 10 steps ahead. That this appears to be a tragedy from one angle, but I have such a positive opinion about Allah that, you know what, like 10 steps after this will turn into something beautifully amazing and positive for me. So he said, you have hilm, number one. Number two, he said, you have anat. And anat is another quality which basically is normally translated as like being very deliberate, very methodical. So to give you an idea what anat is, in another narration, the Prophet ﷺ says, al-anatu min Allah, wal-ajalatu min ash-shaytan. That being deliberate, being methodical, following a plan, sticking to the plan, is a quality that's godlike. It's from Allah. But the opposite, having ajal, having haste, right? Giving up, panicking, right? That is from shaitan. That is a very demonic sort of state. So this is something the Prophet praised. People who have a plan, they're methodical about what they do, and they take the requisite steps required. So similarly, we're going to talk in more detail about what those steps look like, right, and how does one react. Number two, perhaps the most foundational and the most fundamental and the most elementary hadith that governs this area of once I've worked on myself and I'm now considering who I might marry, what do I look for? What kind of person do I marry? There's not a single young person or even old person that,
Who drives a white Chevy outside?
White Chevy?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Anybody drive a white Chevy? It's electrical? No. It's nice.
All right.
Sorry.
Huh? Yeah.
Alright.
So,
Let's go out. It's okay. Thank you so much for your
what were we talking about?
Breakfast.
That's right, marriage. Okay, very good. So there is a very, really famous hadith, perhaps the most famous hadith in regards to marriage and what to look for. And I told you there's not a single student that comes into my office that I don't share this hadith first, because this hadith sets the stage as to what the priorities are. And I kind of mentioned it last time as like a screening tool to start off with. So the famous hadith says that the Prophet ﷺ said that al-mar'atu tunkahu al-mar'a li-arba'. That tunkahu al-mar'a li-arba'. That a woman is married for 4 reasons. Now, before going into the hadith, some context is required. In this moment, the Prophet ﷺ was talking to a group of men. So he's telling them what qualities they should look for in a wife, but it's vice versa. Women can also look for these qualities in men. And he said very famously, he said a woman is married for 4 reasons. The first, he said, li jamaliha. She's married for her beauty. For her beauty. Number 2, he says li maliha. She's married for wealth. For her wealth. Number 3, She says she's married for her family. The word used is ahl. Ahl can be translated as family or lineage, either one. And for, he said, for deen, for religion. And the end of the hadith says, فَظْفَرْ بِذَاتِ الدِّينِ. Choose the one with religion, تَرِبَتْ يَدَاكَ. Choose the one with religion, تَرِبَتْ يَدَاكَ, which literally translates to, your hands will be full of dust. Your hands will be full of dust. Now, if you literally translate it, that sounds like a negative thing, right? Like you just got left with dust in your hand. In English, it sounds like you lost. But taribat yadak in Arabic was a classical phrase which meant like congratulations. Congratulations. Like you've won the lottery. You've got the jackpot. So if you marry someone who's committed to their deen, you've won in life. May you be congratulated. May you have glad tidings. Right? So a few thoughts about this hadith. Number one, here the Prophet ﷺ is clearly laying out that there are several considerations that you must take into account when you're trying to find someone for marriage. You cannot discount how they look. That matters. You cannot discount like financial situation and financial outlook, financial habits, right? That matters. Number three, lesson number two, is often like overly zealous. I won't say religious because if you're doing this, you're not really following the hadith. So you're giving the illusion that you're religious. But I would say overly zealous people, in an effort to be religious, they'll say, you know what, I just want deen. I just want religion. I don't care about anything else. We could live in a box. I don't care what they look like. I don't care what the family is. And it gives the veneer of like, okay, wow, you're marrying for deen. But ask anyone who's actually worked in the community, like what makes and breaks a marriage, like these other things matter. And the Prophet ﷺ is being very clear about this. And to make things even more clear, in another separate narration, he finds out about a young man who's about to get married. And he asked him a simple question, have y'all met? Have you seen her? And he says, no. As like a thing of like pride. He's like, no, I trust my, people set me up, my parents, whatever. I don't find the need to like meet her. And the Prophet actually said, no, don't do it that way. Actually go meet her and go look and see if you guys are compatible. Right? If you're compatible. Number three, the third thing, is at the end of the day, the Prophet ﷺ did emphasize religion as the one thing that you should not compromise on. You should not compromise on. Right? Which, and I alluded to this last time too, that each of these things has a spectrum of acceptance. Right? And so there may not be an initial attraction, but you have to ask yourself, am I repulsed by the person? Right? If you are, like there's no sense of like trying it out, you're wasting your time. But if you can see attraction building, right? If you can see it building, that's a check mark in that category. Right? It's a check mark in that category. If there's some overlap in like financial outlook and habits, that's one check mark in that category. So you want to get as many check marks as possible. And what this hadith is telling us is, if any one of these four things does not have a check on it, that's what I would call. Personally, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts as well, but for me, the way I phrase it is, that's a major screening red flag. It's a screening red flag. So there's two phrases here, like you screen in general, like this is worth even trying. Is this person even worth inquiring about? Right? So in that pre-contemplative kind of stage, that these four things, at minimum, need to somewhat align. Somewhat align. If you're on totally different pages when it comes to finances, and you come from totally different backgrounds to the point where it's irreconcilable, when you have two different ideas of religion, it's not worth your time to explore. You're gonna waste your time. You're gonna waste your time. So these four categories need to be checked off first before we even begin the conversation. Is that clear? Or is that unclear? Cool? All right. So that's the first thing I'll say. A couple of more things to kind of consider, and then I'll turn it over to the more important part of the session, which is like the actual practical how to. And that is, in this process, you may go through all of these stages. You may inquire about someone's religion. You may check all the boxes when it comes to attraction. You may have initial, really encouraging conversations, but then for whatever reason, it fizzles out, things come up, you're not able to get married, and how does one deal with that fallout, right? And I'm sure Sister Lama has much more to say about this. I'll give you one example from the Quran that stands out to me. They're one of many examples you could use, but Allah teaches us over and over again that sometimes Allah delays you in order to elevate you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes delays you in order to elevate you. Let's give an example. Yusuf alayhi salam is sent to jail, which is not enough, but he's falsely accused. Everyone knows that. He's falsely accused. He shouldn't be in jail. So if I were him, I would be like pining at every opportunity to get out of his false imprisonment. Not only the Quran depicts him like making da'wah in jail, like calling to Allah, still not like stopping being a prophet. But as one of his cellmates is sort of like leaving the jail and getting out, he goes to him, "Udhkurni," like mention me to your master. Because he had the feeling that he's going to go back into government work. He may be, connected to people in high places. But as anyone here knows the story, what happened? He forgot. He forgot. Now, this is going to be a comment on my own lack of iman, right? But if I were Yusuf, I'd be like super annoyed. Like I'd be like really pissed. Like, really? You had one job. You had one job. We were cellmates. I made you Muslim for God's sake. And you got out before me. Yeah. He's angry too. Right? How dare he? Right? Like you got out before me. And I told you, I gave you one thing to do. Just mention my name to the king. But think about this. If he had mentioned his name to the king as soon as he got out of jail, would it have mattered? The king would have been like, yeah, so what? Like, I don't care about your, like, dumb cellmate. You know, like, who cares? But he forgot, and then a situation arose where the king had a dream himself. And he was desperate. He was desperate to do what? Have anyone come and interpret the dream. And then now, when his former cellmate goes, oh, I did some time in prison with a guy who's an expert at dream interpretation. Then Yusuf alayhi salam became so much more valuable. He became so much more valuable to the king. To the point where the king said, I don't care what he was accused of. I don't care who put him there. It could have been whatever minister put him there. I don't care. Bring him to me. Because the minister doesn't matter here. I'm the king. I'll rank the minister. So whatever crime he did, or supposedly did, he's forgiven as long as he can come interpret my dream, because I'm losing sleep over this. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala delayed Yusuf's release from jail. So sometimes Allah delays you just to fast track you later. Sometimes Allah delays you to elevate you later, right? And I think with that attitude, we have to approach every potential spouse with this attitude, that we're not going to put all our eggs in a basket. We're going to trust in Allah's plan by number one, having hilm, which is forbearance, being deliberate in our methodology. Number three, allowing the hadith of the Prophet to guide us when we screen people and think about what our priorities are. Right? And number four, finally, in the event that something doesn't work out, how do we respond to that? Right? That's when real trust of Allah is manifested. Right? So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us people who live by these principles in our life and allow them to guide our steps moving forward. Before I hand it over to my esteemed colleague and the part of the session that all of us wait for, right? I know y'all do this, right? Like, when is he going to stop? Then we can finally turn it over to the actual kind of, person. I will want to just say a couple of words I know I don't need to say this, but I'm very, I try to be very mindful about these things. I am someone who tries to be very, very dedicated to my students here. I skip out on like 90% of invitations I get from like community programs, family nights, potlucks. I say no to most of them because if it conflicts with something I'm doing here, this always takes priority. It always takes priority. And so whenever I'm not here, like you should know that was probably not my choice. It was probably not my choice. Like I had to be somewhere else, right? So in that regard, I know it's really emotional for you, you know. But every once in a while, my presence and my attention is needed elsewhere, and there's a neat sort of tie-in to what we're talking about in these sessions. In fact, I have to get ready with my whole family. That's why they're here to go out of town. I will be conducting the marriage of one of my former students. As an imam, you get called to like hundreds and thousands of weddings. I have lost count how many weddings I've done at this point. But it's extra special when it's like a student of ours, someone who graduated from UT, someone who spent time there in Nueces. So we're gonna, inshallah, with your permission, take our leave and enjoy the rest of the session. I'm sure you will. This is a really exciting topic, and if you all allow me, I'll take my leave, inshallah ta'ala. And yeah.
Are you leaving now?
I will leave in like 30 seconds.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I apologize.
No, no worries.
But I'm leaving in much better hands.
Okay.
Very capable and qualified hands, inshallah.
Okay, so sounds good. All right, assalamu alaikum everyone. So a quick question just to gauge the room. Who's done the work from last week of figuring out that future version of you? With just a raise of hand, just so I can see. Okay, here we go. Okay, all right. Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. So if you all take this seriously, I might pick one of you or a couple of you to start coaching for real. So if you really do take this stuff seriously, this will change your life. And I wish I knew this when I was this age. So yeah, okay, so let's start off, because I knew there was some questions of like, I kept talking about what is best self, what is your authentic self, what does that even mean? So I realized I never defined it, so I'm gonna define it now. So what I genuinely mean is the version of you that is closest to Allah. What does that mean exactly? So the version of you, let me take a step back. We have about 60,000 thoughts a day in our head. Every single thought creates how we feel. And when we don't take a look at our mind, we will act in a way that is not ourselves. Because we have a lot of thoughts that are unintentional. Just something that we've either inherited from our childhood or something that we've picked up along the way. And we start acting from those thoughts, those beliefs. So when I did from the assignment last week of like, who do you want to be? Being the real authentic version of you is changing those thoughts to act from a version of you that you would be proud of, that you would be honest with yourself. So authentic mean I am honest with myself. You take responsibility for how you're feeling and acting so that, you understand. So when you are in a marriage, inshallah, you don't just dump all those unintentional thoughts onto the other person. So there's kind of a couple of thoughts on this. I don't know if you're kind of...
One common question is, do you need to, what are some kind of benchmarks to know that you've arrived there? And do you need to be that kind of almost perfect version? I don't know what other word to use, but perfect, to start the process of marriage or not?
Yeah, so that's a great point.
Okay.
So when I'm saying all of this stuff, there's no version of perfection. It's not all or nothing. It's, are you striving towards it? Right? So there, even when we're married, there's going to be days where we're not the best version of ourselves, and there's days that we are. But it's more about, am I striving towards it? Am I trying to be that version of me? I would say to know if you're ready for marriage is you're someone who is willing to take responsibility for whatever you're doing, right? Like even when on your worst days and on your best days, you take responsibility for how you're thinking and feeling. The reason I say authentic self when you are closest to Allah, that connection you have to Allah, when you're so weak and like just so like sick of it, and you vent out to Allah, you're vulnerable, you claim your mistakes, you're responsible. Ya Allah, I'm so messed up, and this is what's happening with me, and this and this. That version of you, you've kind of released the shame, and you've owned that part of you in a way. So, and the reason this is important is because you need to be vulnerable when you are in a relationship, and so it helps to be that version of you that is aiming to be honest and vulnerable with yourself. Was that clear, or what thoughts do you have on that?
Yeah, that was really clear. Let's say, for instance, so we talk about this a lot, right? Like, we gave a khutbah a couple of weeks ago about how we view our sins, and we said that part of it that is like talking about sin is also sinful. So if someone asks you, like, do you do this sin? Like, you're not obliged to reveal like your personal shortcomings. But moving away from that, just generally speaking, let's say you do struggle with waking up for Fajr or something. Like, in your experience, is that something to be upfront and honest about? Like, like, I'm talking to you for marriage, and I don't want like my shortcomings to affect this relationship. Here's the things I struggle with. Is there value in
So that's a great example. So
Yeah.
let's say you're someone who's really struggling with Fajr. The authentic version of you will be straight up honest about it. Listen, this is where I'm at, and I'm really working on it, and I'm really striving for it. But you're honest about your shortcomings. The lower self, the ego self, will be like, yeah, I'm good, like there's nothing to worry about, and you're kind of putting on a performance for the other person. So there's kind of two versions, right? There's the higher version of yourself. When I say own where you're at, like you're being honest with where you're at. The lower version of you is more of the like people pleasing version of you, of trying to mend yourself to be someone you're not. And that is really important when you're talking to someone, because then if you're not there, if you're not the higher version of you, you will attract someone who's also in the lower version of like just like you're both putting on a performance. You're both not really, you're not really being who you are. So you attract someone that's not.
performance versus authentic?
Yes, exactly, yeah. So an example of when you're in lower self, right? If you can look internally, if you're in the way you think and act toward yourself. So for example, if you think of yourself like, oh, I'm not worthy enough, like this is terrible, and I'm just not good enough, and all these negative thoughts, and then you show up more judgmental towards other people, or all these kind of things, that's more of the lower self showing up. Okay, so that's just more of an example. Now, when it comes to like what's the bar, it's like, let's say this is not the main way you are throughout the day. Let's say some days you're like this, some days you're not, but the majority of the time you're trying to be your higher self. The higher self is always striving for the best. They're on a mission, they have goals, they have like priorities. So last time we talked about can you write out the list of who is this version of you? Who is this version of you that you're thinking of 10 years from now? Let's say if we know for a fact you're not going to get married for the next 5 years, how do you want to spend that single life that you have in the best way that you can? That consists of creating a bucket list for yourself. What do I want to do? Like, I mean, I know my spouse is coming later, but what do I want to do now so I can build that version of myself? And so this is what kind of I want to cover today. And I'll try to keep it short, but because I do want questions, that's more important to your questions and stuff. But we all have wants and needs that we have to fulfill. And sometimes the problem with today is we put all our wants and needs into one person, and we try to fill it with one person. And it is very, it's unrealistic, and it puts a big burden on actually finding the right person. It's a lot of pressure. So the way to go about this is building the life you want, filling your cup with what Allah has already given you right now. So how do we do this? We figure out what you actually want in your life. Okay, let's say so the first thing is to figure out, what do I want in my life so I can fill my cup? What are some wants that we have? So let's say you have a want where you want someone to travel with. You want someone to, go work out with. You want someone to have intellectual conversations with. You want someone to, I don't know, go hiking with, talk about Islam with, have kids with, okay? So each of these are wants. And some of these wants can be filled with other people. It doesn't have to be filled with the spouse. The spouse doesn't have to have it. So let's start with like intellectual conversations. I want my husband or my spouse I want to have intellectual conversations with. Okay, if they fulfilled everything else and they don't have the intellectual conversation part, where can you fulfill that part on your own? So what that would look like is you find a friend or someone and you develop, and you kind of build a network of your wants that fulfill each one of your wants, right? So for me, for example, I have a best friend that we just go hours and hours of just ranting about intellectual stuff, right? My husband doesn't really like the things that I'm passionate about. He's not really there, but I have a best friend that does that. I have a friend that I go hiking with. I have a friend that I talk about Islam with, all these other things, right? So it's so important to create that network now so that you come from a more like sufficient, fulfilled place. Otherwise, when you're coming from, again, that lower self comes in, you feel needy and desperate. And when you're needy and desperate, you will settle for anything. You will make decisions that are not good for you. So starting by filling our cup, it helps to see what exactly our wants are. And this helps to just actually write it out. Because if we just have it in our head, we don't actually act on it. And so, for example, let me think here. So let's say you have a want of, ultimately what we all want is connection and love. Connection, feeling connected and loved. Like, that's why we're kind of looking for a spouse. If you don't have that from someone else, where can you get it from right now? Like, if that's your main mission before you find a spouse, can you find a friend? Can you find a family member that you can build better bonds with so that you can feel more fulfilled? What does that look like to you? So am I making sense so far? Just checking in. Yes? Okay, good. Okay, great. So now that we've created the list, and I urge you all to really do this, and this is actually why, right before this class, I wrote a list for what I want in a spouse about 3 years ago. Yesterday I looked at it again, and my spouse has everything I've ever wanted. And I urge all of you to do it, especially when you're not attached to someone, to actually write out this list and figure out what is it that you want that you can get from a spouse or from other people, right? Okay. So now it comes to asking the question, how do I know if there's someone, let's say there's someone I like and I don't know if this is a person, like I should talk to them or not, or if they're for me. First, we have to create a list of deal breakers that are non-negotiable. Non-negotiable as in, figure out what aligns with your values. And to know if you're being too picky, we have to see, okay, the list of things that you have, are they coming from your values or are they coming from your ego? And I'll give an example, right? Let's say I'm looking for a spouse and I want them to be 6'1", height-wise. I want them to, to be as Islamically as engaged as I am. Okay, so let's just say that's the list there. All right, so let's say the first one, the 6'1" height thing. That's a requirement. Is that coming from your ego or from your highest self? Can someone give me tell me what they think?
Ego.
Ego. Okay, why?
Because you're looking for big appearance.
Okay, yeah. But what if, yes, please.
It's something that they can't work on.
They can't work on, okay. But what if, because one thing that is important is physical attraction, right? So if someone says no, they have to be 6'1", what does that mean exactly?
It's a deal breaker.
It could be a deal breaker, but does it align with your values? We don't know. Like, it goes back to the person. If they have to be 6'1", and your reason is it's because I've learned that attractiveness is only if someone is 6'1" or above, there's a problem because you have to question what is actually attraction to you. And same thing with men, right? Like if a woman has to be a certain way, we just have to question, is this coming from a value or not? Let me give another example because maybe that's not as clear. Can someone give me a deal breaker that they have?
Drinking.
Drinking. Okay, great. Okay, so let's say you meet someone and they say, you know, every weekend I drink socially. Is that a deal breaker or what?
It's a deal breaker.
Why?
It's not something that I envision in my life. Like my lifestyle doesn't agree with it.
Yeah, and to be specific, it doesn't align with your value of Islam. Right? It helps to be more specific of what value this is breaking. Because when we're talking to someone, we have to see if their values align with you. So if someone just drinks, that means they don't take their Islam as valuable as you do. Okay, and so when it comes to having must-haves, here's a couple of reasons why people stay single. First, they kind of given up. They're like, well, this is never going to happen for me, so they just give up. Second, they're kind of picky on what is actually a must-have and what is actually a deal breaker. And in this kind of section, I want to more clarify how do you distinguish the two of what's a must-have and what's a deal breaker. I wish I had more examples. I can't come up with on the spot. But if someone has, let's say, a list of must-haves, and they figure out their list, and one of them just doesn't match. One of the must-haves, they don't have it. Okay, they're this, and this, but they're just from the country that you don't want them to be from. They're from I don't know. I don't even want to say a country, but they're not from the country that they're from. Okay, is that a deal breaker for you? Can someone answer that?
No.
No? Okay, why? Why is it not a deal breaker?
I'm just guessing. It's probably my answer.
Okay, but what if your parents would never in a million years accept this?
Okay, that's
Probably a deal breaker, right? So it's really depends on the person. There are circumstances and everything. And that's why it's so important to have what is the absolute must have. So if you know your parents, or they have they have some sort of opening that maybe they're open to it, I would talk to them first to see that before you put that on the list of must-haves, because otherwise you're wasting each other's time, right? So, okay, yeah. So, when you're, let me think here. How do you know if you're ready? When you're talking to someone and you have your list, let's say, actually this is another one. If you have another one of your must-haves is they must be a certain age. They must be 26. Let's say you're 30 something and they must be 26. And that's one of your must-haves. Is that coming from ego or best self?
Depends on the person.
Okay, what do you think?
I mean, I figured that was going to be the answer they wanted.
Depend on the person, okay. But what in your experience, if they're yeah, I just want a girl who's 26.
If she's older, childbearing age, complications, maybe that's somebody that wants to get married and have kids immediately.
Okay.
I don't know. It could also be that 26 is somebody who's a bit more mature than somebody who's 22. Whereas if it was older, they'd be more mature, but maybe they're set in their ways or something like that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, another, someone could say that, which is great examples, and someone could just say, I just want a younger person because it's easier, I don't know, I've heard this before actually, it's easier to control them. And yeah, so, you can tell he's not operating from his best self, from the ego. I'm trying to see, okay, so when it comes to creating a network to fulfill your wants, does anyone have thoughts on that? I just want to hear what your thoughts are on that so far. The network. Yeah.
I mean, from what I understand is that like, so the need that or want that your spouse is fulfilling is the thing that nobody else can fulfill, and that's pretty much childbearing, right? Like having a kid.
Yeah.
Aside from that, maybe connection and love, sure, yeah, but that doesn't leave you with much in terms of that. So that part I'm confused about.
Okay, so other than, right, that's a good question. So if you're looking for a spouse, what are the basic, most core wants that you're looking for? Ultimately, if you get to define that, but you're looking for someone who you can come to who's understanding, who has empathy, who has who you can talk to and has some understanding about. Like you can come home and just relax. Maybe, right? That's what you're looking for. And so what does that look like exactly? How does that play out? And let's say you want someone who's on their deen. What does that actually look like? Because let's say you're someone who is like much higher in their deen, like might take it much more seriously, but they have the basics, but they're not as like intense as you are. Is that okay? Is that what's our thoughts there? Yeah, I'm asking you.
So I think like the previous session with Imam, like I think we can use like potentially as an example, how he was saying that they're both on the deen, but he's an Imam and his wife is not.
Right.
So that's like, you wouldn't think that those two would come together, but they do, and it works, alhamdulillah, mashallah, tabarakallah.
Yeah.
So I think it functions in different ways.
Exactly.
Like, as long as you have like the base understanding that you have to be a nice person.
Yeah.
Quran, like fast and like all that other stuff. That's
Right.
pretty much all you really need.
Yeah, so it just, whatever your want is, it doesn't have to look exactly the way you want it in the marriage, but it's just, is it there? Like, you want a spouse that's understanding at least, right? You want a spouse that has the same want matches. So the way to actually see if you and your spouse are a good deal, or a good match, I mean, you figure out what they want, you have what you want, and do you see if you have a want match? Okay? Here's another thing, right? Let's say, like for example, my husband, he loves to travel. He loves to travel. For me, I hate traveling. I can't stand it. So we don't have a want match there, but I'm willing to go with him when he travels. It's like not a deal breaker for me, right? And he can go travel with his friends too. So there's like, we can work on that. So it just depends on what's your wants, and then like seeing if there's a compromise. Now let's say I have a want that, let's say I want like 10 children and he wants like 2, that we can't, right? Deal breaker. That's just an example, it's extreme, right? Okay, so once that's done, now let's say you're talking to someone, you found someone that you're interested in, and how do we go about this? Okay, so first we just have to see, are our want matches, are they the initial ones that we see? Are they there? Yes, okay. Now we have a 90-day container. So when I say 90 days, the problem with people nowadays is they just kind of go with the flow. And also, before we go to the 90 days, one of the want matches has to be timeline to make sure, are you actually ready for marriage? Or are we just like seeing things out? You have to make sure both of you are actually on the same timeline. Because if one of you is like, no, I'll get married in like 3 years, and one's like, no, I want to get married now, no match. We have to cut that off and move on. So, and that's the hardest part for people, especially because I know I've talked to people here and around and on the college age where they like someone right now, and they're talking to them, and you know, no shame if you are right now, but it's really helpful for you to just ask yourself, where is this actually going? Because if there's no plan and they're not ready and you're just kind of there, you're kind of holding them hostage. It's like or if the person's not ready and you are, it's time to let go and move on to the next person, right? So going back to, let's say you just matched, you found both of you have the same wants. Now we move on to like, okay, let's set a 90-day container where we both just talk extremely like seriously, all the questions, all the premarital coaching, all counseling, all of whatever it takes, so that on the 90th day we make a decision. And once we make a decision, the decision is yes, we should continue, and the decision is, or the decision is no. And once you make that decision, there's like a plan, there's something happening, there's intent. That way you're not just going with the flow and asking questions. Because actually I was talking to someone a couple of days ago where they've been together for 3 years, just talking, and they haven't asked the serious questions yet. And she's scared to ask them because what if it's not like what they actually want? So that's heartbreaking, right? It's like you've become so attached that like it's too late at that point. And speaking of attachment, it becomes to save yourself from attaching from someone, you have to come in with the mindset of, let me see if this is gonna work. And if this doesn't work, alhamdulillah, and if it does work, alhamdulillah. If you are not in that mindset and you go with it and like, I have to make this work, you will become attached and that the ego comes out again, right? I'll do whatever it takes to make it work. Versus, like, I'll like kind of detach and let Allah take care of it. Let me see what I can do to see if this is the right fit. Okay. So now that we've gotten into it, and that's when I say the authentic self is more of the detached, has let go of the outcome, but is striving for the results. Let me see. Okay, I found a nice girl, a nice man I want to talk to. Let me see where this goes. And then you know, hey, I'm interested to get to know you. What's your thoughts? And then you kind of, I would say the initial, like just the screening phase would be like a week or two, or not maximum over a month, right? Don't take too long. All you need is to ask is the basic wants, are they matching? However you want to go about that. And then once that's done, you move into the all right, now that we've kind of figured out our wants are matching, how do you feel about going into a 90-day container? And you ask all the questions there, what it would be like, all these things. Then you make a decision. How do you know if you're making the right decision? I always get asked this one. How do you know if you're making the right decision? It's just a decision. It's a decision about, this is what I know, this is this information I know with what I have right now. According to what I see, seems like it's the right decision. And every single day, as soon as you meet the person you like, you are praying istikhara every single day to detach yourself from the outcome. Ya Allah, I met this great person, sounds like I'm in, like I feel like this is a great choice. And Ya Allah, if this is not good for me, please take it away from me. And if it is, then Ya Allah, allow it to work gracefully with your mercy and with your barakah. And throughout this process, you are trying your best to be, again, like on your best version of you. That's sometimes, I'm gonna go on a tangent, but like when you are not the best version of you and you're operating from thoughts like, this is probably not gonna work, I'm never gonna get married, this is too good to be true, your brain will find evidence of how that will work, like that will be, it will find evidence of how it's not gonna work, and it will like kind of self-destruct. And that's what happens with couples where they're talking and kind of fizzle out, where they don't really take the time of why did it not work, what happened, other than just like fizzling out. Yeah, so going back to throughout this 90 days, and it helps to also have someone you can talk to when you are struggling with something throughout these 90 days, and treat it as if it's like, okay, we are in, let's see how this goes. And whatever problems come up, try to work it out. Questions on? Yes?
That kind of sounds like dating, no?
It's for the intention of getting married.
Okay.
So you're talking, it's not a relationship.
All right,
Yeah,
okay.
you're making it work.
Just, okay.
You're seeing if it's gonna, is this something we are gonna commit to? As soon as there's a deal breaker, it's done. Yes?
Follow-up question. What are the kind of questions that you're going to be asking? Like, because I'm assuming they're based on your values and the wants,
Yes.
to kind of renegotiating like those terms. But like, how do you know you're asking the right questions? What if like, okay, sure, at the 90 days you find out that like, okay, we're good, but then you forgot to ask some really, really key questions, then you get surprised at the end.
Right, yeah. So the 100, who knows the 100 questions by Imam Majid? Has seen them? Anyone seen that? Yes, okay. Yeah, so those questions are good questions to cover each topic of each area. And you come up with questions as you do your best to ask all the questions you can during that time. Every time you're meeting, you have the intention of getting to know each other. It's not, we're not just meeting for fun. There's an intention. And so, your question is, what if like the 90 days pass and a question comes up and turns out it like I didn't get my answer? Then I mean, you haven't asked all the questions then, like, right? You just try your best to do what you can in that 90 days. And by the way, there will be things that comes up afterwards, but it's not a deal breaker. Our mission is to figure out, are there any deal breakers that absolutely I cannot deal with, and so that you can continue, right? Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. Yes.
So where did you get the 90 days? It's like an arbitrary number, or?
So yeah, great question. There's some research out there, but also I've asked a couple of shuyukh in all of this, and even Sheikh Mufti, not Mufti, sorry, Ustad Abdurrahman Murphy. He was my premarital counselor, but also a lot of other research I've done. 90 days is a good amount for you to get to know each other and all the stuff to come up. Like, you can't just fake it for 90 days. Like, eventually you're gonna have to, the real part of you comes out, right? So again, it's not dating. I know people see like, oh, is that dating? No, it's not. It's yes, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm done.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's getting to know each other. It's very intentional. And throughout the whole time, you are detached. You're thinking, okay, Ya Allah, please, if this doesn't work, please take it away from me. Right? Okay, yeah.
And so you talk about like asking these questions, but what is the etiquette of asking? Is it like you go to the parents and then like blah 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 to a video, or like?
So I would actually ask the person that you're talking to what works best for them. Like, because it's different. There's a whole spectrum of culture of like from extremely conservative to some people don't care. So some women prefer to go directly to them, not to their parents first, right? Some people, it just depends on them. And so, like, you ask their permission. Hey, like I would either, I don't know how, like if you know someone or know someone about them, or you ask them directly, hey, salam alaikum, like I'm interested in get to know you. What's the best way to go about this? Sometimes, right? Yeah. So that's one way, right? So yes, so that's kind of, yeah. So that's kind of where you make that decision, okay, Ya Allah. And this is where we have to be reminded about the power of dua. The power of dua is so, we forget this part. We like, Ya Allah, this is exactly what I'm looking for. I want someone who does this, 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 and this. And I don't want to compromise on things that I know I won't be happy with. And so now that we're almost entering Ramadan, I really, this is the task I want you guys to focus on, is making that list and praying, Ya Allah, give me this list. Give me this list, whatever that you just asked for. And whatever way Allah will fulfill it for you, either through friends, through this, but really focusing on, this is what I want. This is the ahsan, like, life that I want, just filled with things that I want to build, so that you're feeling fulfilled, and inshallah Allah will give you that that list. And the benefit of building that list is it creates the person in real life in your mind, and then you start knowing how to filter out people immediately. Oh, they don't have this thing. Oh, they don't have this thing, and this thing is definitely like not, this won't work for me. This one will work for me. Every single thing, there is not a leaf that falls from the tree without Allah's permission. So we have to ask Allah's permission. Ya Allah, make this work, make it work this way. And it's really, I've seen this process over and over, and it works for people when they take this stuff seriously. Like dua and putting in the effort to figure out what you want. I wanted to talk about understanding the ego, but I think I want to leave that for next session, because that is a whole another thing that we can work on. But I'll give a little sneak peek. Sometimes when we get into a relationship, or like we're getting to know someone, the way the ego can come out is it's based on like fear, or like fear of losing the other person, or even manipulation or control. That can come up when you haven't managed your fears, and there's like a lot of insecurities that you're trying to figure out with the other person, and so it kind of drops off. And so that's kind of a topic for another thing, because that's actually a lot to talk about. But so I think for now I'm going to stop there, and I would love to hear from you guys what's on your mind, what questions, thoughts, because I don't think we set up the anonymous thing, so you can just say, you can raise your hand and talk. talk. Yes.
I'm just curious because we talked about these questions, A, B, C, D, E, but how do you actually approach someone that asks these questions? Like, how does that work?
Okay. You ask. Let's say you talk to you meet someone you like,
Okay.
and with your social skills, you won't ask the abrupt like, hey, like how many kids you want. Right? You ask like the most easiest questions to start with. Right? Like, oh, are you thinking about marriage, or like not even that, like asking things that it's kind of a skill to work on actually. Like asking questions that are not too abrasive and invasive in the beginning, and you build up the safety to actually ask other questions. Does that make help? Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it is all. There's a lot of videos on YouTube of how to be more socially. What's the word? Just like not too much, you know. So in a way that's like easier. But yeah. Okay. Thoughts, questions? I wish we had the list. Oh, you have it?
Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
About to.
Okay, she's about to. Yes.
Just a clarification, you said after like 90 days, if maybe a later part, if I continue, do you mean like getting engaged, or like talking, or?
Yeah. So whatever the next steps are. For again, it depends on the context. For engaged or meeting the parents or whatever it is. I would suggest like letting your parents know that you are talking to someone within those 90 days. But yes, next steps is decision. When I say decision, okay, we're ready to get married. That's all it takes. 90. It doesn't take longer than that. It shouldn't take longer than that, unless you're really extending it for some reason. It's not necessary, but yeah.
Just make sure to do all those after class too, and then the parents need the phone can just say yes out loud, and then
Okay. There's no QR code.
no,
Oh, okay.
this is the
Okay. If you guys want to get this, is the QR code is tinyurl.com/SBC SB class sign up. Got it? Okay. Huh? Got it? Okay. Got it. Can you expand on the role of the wali during the process? Ooh, we need Imam Anwar for this. That's more of the role of the wali during the process. You know, I'll just leave that to Imam Anwar. So that's a big one. Not a big one, but it's just there's different rulings. So I want to make sure whoever is asking this, but we'll save it for next time, inshallah. And we have all the questions even from the previous class, so that way we don't lose anything. Would you say there are examples of what we shouldn't tolerate? I know it depends on us, but it's hard knowing what's toxic other than, of course, why does this keep moving? Okay, what would you say are examples of what we shouldn't tolerate? I know it depends on us, but it's hard knowing what's toxic other than, of course, physical, emotional abuse versus just the reality of marriage, like imbalance of responsibilities. Okay, that's a great question. A red flag that I would say I teach people of how to know if something's wrong. If you're talking to interacting with the other person and you feel like something's wrong, like it doesn't feel good to you, like they're saying something that doesn't feel good. First thing is analyzing. Okay, is this coming from me, or is this something actually a behavior that I'm not good and I'm not okay with? Right. So if let's say someone keeps saying, "Oh, you're just lying," you're always like, like. You say something and they say you're such a liar, right? First thing is you make the request, hey, I don't like when you say that I'm such a liar, okay? But if they keep repeating it and they're not listening to you, that's something that you're not willing to, that's a sign that they're not listening, right? Toxic traits, I would highly recommend, it's just more of an educational thing. What is narcissism? Understanding what narcissism is, how it shows up. Just like if you even Google basic red flags in a relationship, it gives you a list of things to look for. I can't really go through all of them right now, but there are things to look for. But the most important like flag for you is just checking in with yourself. When I'm talking to this person, what happens? And is it because of a trigger from me that I have to work on, or is it from them? And to know the difference is, like, you analyze, why is this bothering me? It bothers me because I feel like they're not listening to me. Okay, if I say, hey, I feel like you're not listening to me, and if they listen, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that, versus if they dismiss you, that's a red flag, right? Good there? Okay. Oh, a lot of questions coming in. All right, let's move that. What if the other person gets attached in the 90-day period and you aren't interested due to something? How do you deal with breaking the person's heart? Ooh, this is so common. This is too common, actually. People avoid breaking up because they're like, or like cutting it out because they're like, what if I hurt them? And it's like, girl, you're already hurting them more than if you're staying with them, right? So they're allowed to feel pain. Like, they're allowed to feel heartbreak. The only pain they're going through is, oh, I thought this was gonna work, but it didn't. Like, that's their thought. And that's their thing to deal with. And that's why I'm going back to the root of why, to avoid all of this, both of you have to be in this kind of like, let's just see where this goes, like from the very beginning. Like, let's not get attached, let's just see how this goes. And then if it weren't to work out and one of us says something, we'll just, we'll act accordingly. And if the other person happens to be, attached and didn't really do the work, that's on them. If you can't feel guilty for doing your part, as long as you're showing up respectfully. Hey, even before I was married, I would do this part to make sure I do it respectfully. Some people would say, wow, like, I've never been, I feel so honored, like, that you cut it off in such a nice way. So there are ways to do it in such a respectful way, so that you don't, hurt people. If you have follow-up questions on what I said, just raise your hand so I can. Okay. How do you go about approaching a man as a woman, given the stigma around it? I would start off sometimes just starting off with small talk, introducing yourself. I wouldn't say, hey, I'm interested in marriage right away. Like, I would ask around, and here's why I'm hesitating on this. It's very different for everyone. Some people are a lot more comfortable with saying, hey, like, are you good with, like, going out for lunch and, getting to know each other, right? And let's just assume we're all doing it for marriage. If you're not doing it for marriage, don't ask that question, right? I wouldn't just straight up say I want to get married to the man right away, right? Just more of like, listen, like, I'm interested in getting to know you. What are your thoughts on, going out for lunch? So, and I please, whoever is hearing me and taking it out of context, is not dating. I'm just saying this more as like, if you're a woman and I would ask even around, like ask the imam, ask the friends, hey, is he single? What's the status? And going about it. And there's a lot of, like I said, YouTube videos of how to approach is this socially from a man to a woman, or a woman to a man, sorry. And so I'll leave you to that, whoever asked this question. It's gonna be hard. Okay, I've tried really hard to be the best version of myself. I have contemplated whether I'm too picky, but it's hard to get excited about someone who doesn't seem to be on my level. How do I protect myself from inflated ego or arrogance when it comes to the search? The question to ask yourself is, when you're talking to someone and let's say they match all your boxes or they don't, your question is, would I rather be single or would I rather just go with this, like what I'm like, that when they ask it, like being the best version of yourself is knowing that when I'm talking to someone, I want someone who I want, not someone who I'm just like, whatever, it's just fine, I'll figure it out. More of like, this is what I want, and it matches all my values. And how do I protect myself from inflated ego is when you're deciding or rejecting someone, what's your reason for it and why? Do you like your reason? If your reason is they're not good enough for me, and you like your reason, then moving on to the next. But sometimes that reason, and you're not really questioning it and you're not really reflecting it on to someone else or talking to someone about it who's experienced, it can come off as like you're being too picky. I wish this person could give an example, but it's helpful to just know being your best self is, how do I, let me re-ask the question because I don't think I answered that part. Being the best version of yourself does not mean being like perfect. Let's just start there too. It just means you are trying your best to be as human as possible and real with yourself. So when you're more real with yourself, you get to see, that is a filter for you to see when someone is struggling, like you're talking to someone and they have a certain flaw, you start seeing them as a human being rather than something to reject. And every human that you talk to, they have a story of what they're going through, and you start seeing it like that rather than like, oh, they're not good enough for me. They're just another human being. Everyone's just a human being going through a story. Whatever flaws shows up, it's probably coming from pain of a struggle that they went through. And the best version of you would know I went through a lot of pain and I have some flaws because of that, and maybe this person is also going through that, so let me understand it in that way. I'm saying this because when I first, for example, I met my husband, there was a lot of like things that I thought were red flags, but really when I just took a step back and realized, oh, we're just human beings, it opened up a connection. And so it helps to see it as let me see what this human is about. And then ego is more about, no, this is absolutely no. It's more rigid. Your decisions are more rigid when you're coming from your ego. It's like, this is just not allowed. Thoughts? Okay. How do you deal with the doubt that Allah has planned someone better for you, even when the person you are talking to right now checks all the right boxes? There is always going to be someone better than you, better than them, in a way, in certain areas. So I want you to think of it as like, this is the package, like the whole package. Do you like this package? And are you in it for life? Because when you make that decision, you're in it for the good and the bad. And so, are there better packages out there? I'm sure there is. So you make a decision. Do I like this package? Does this feel like a package that would suit me? If not, on to the next package. Yeah? Okay. Any thoughts or questions here yet?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is like, then how is it just, okay, you meet somebody who fulfills all like your criteria almost, right? And you're saying that like, there's other people that would be better, but maybe they're better in other facets, right?
Yes, yeah. But they come with a different kind of package, which means they have other flaws that you have to be dealing with. No one is 100%. It's not like you meet this one and okay, you're satisfied with this. There's another package out there that's maybe smarter, but maybe they have some character flaws that you haven't seen yet.
Okay, so I guess my question here is that, and I don't know if this is like a wild question or not, but are there like, a lot of other mates out there for you? Like, I mean, I know that there's gonna be the one, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
With that in mind, like with that question,
Yeah.
assuming.
Well, realistically speaking, you can make it work with anyone.
Right.
Like you could literally choose the next person that comes and make it work. But you want to make a decision based on, is this easy? Is it easy to make it work? Like if it's not easy and it's such a struggle, then that's not like something you want to deal with. So kind of asking yourself, is this the package I want to deal with? And if not, there's other packages out there. And yeah, when I say package, as in like the whole deal of what you're getting, like, you know, family, their character, where they're at right now, accepting of where they're at right now. A lot of my qualms about marriage are culture-based, and I'm trying to run away from my family. How can I change my thoughts so that I can marry for the right intentions? Thank you for asking this question, because there's this question, actually a lot of people are going through this, where they feel like they're trapped in their family and they can't get out. And their family has this rule where you're not allowed to leave until you're married. And so I can't say the only way to get married is like being the best version and having the right intention and all this. Sometimes people are in dangerous situations where marriage is the only way out. And that is something that you have to really evaluate, if that's the truth for you. But I would like to say, the right intention is, I know Allah has the best intentions for me. I'm going to keep looking until I find someone that matches my values, the future that I'm looking for. And I'm not willing to compromise on that. And I'll you know, it's a hard one. Whoever asked this question, I hear you, and you're not alone. There's a lot of people going through that. I was actually talking to a couple of them this past week that it feels there's consequences sometimes. There are families out there who would really destroy that person's life if they did that, just ran away. So it is a reality, unfortunately, and may Allah make it easier for us. But how can I change my thoughts so I can get married for the right intentions? Is working on, Ya Allah, I want to be married with the right intentions. What resources can I look through? What can I do to make sure I do turn into someone like that? And it helps to surround yourself with content or things that you talk about marriage in a beautiful way, so that you're more you have the right intentions. Okay. Wait, I feel like we did not go in depth of how to know you are ready, or to clarify, is it just when you are working on being your best self? How do we measure progress? How to know when you're ready? Are you someone who takes responsibility for how you're feeling and thinking? And what that means is, when you're talking to someone and you feel triggered by someone, do you sit and evaluate, oh wait, is this coming from me or from them? That's like one measurement of how to see if you're ready. Self-accountability, self-awareness. Awareness as in like, oh, my thoughts create how I feel. So if I get into a marriage and, you know, homeboy does something and I got bothered by it, yeah, I have to figure out why it bothers me, right? And then so, because when you don't have that self-awareness, you're gonna act in a way where you lash out, you yell, you like kind of try to control the other person, and that means you're just a sign that you're not mature enough, like spiritually, emotionally mature enough. How to know actually is a good way to see like with how you are with your friends. Do you people please a lot? And again, when I'm talking about this, I'm not saying perfection. We're all people pleasers in some way, but just like, are you aiming towards working on like, oh, this is coming from me, like I am owning this? Because self-accountability is huge when you're in marriage, so that people know, like, and knowing how to communicate, right? This is what I'm going through, and communicating, hey, I feel this way when this happened. And you can practice all of that right now when in your current relationships with your family, with your friends, and not just dismissing that. So how to know if when you're ready for marriage, that's a personal reflection, and then how to decide whether this is the right person for me, that's a decision. Like, decision on based off what I know, based off what we talked about, how to deal with conflict, how to deal with all these problems. It sounds like we are ready. And that's a scary like decision to make, but it's you have to trust your gut in that moment. And then certain things like that. How do we measure progress on knowing if you're ready? This isn't like you can't really measure progress, but you just check in with yourself. You're like, how do I feel when? And by the way, family relationship is the best way to measure your progress, like mentally. When someone triggers you, how do you react to it? I know family was one of the big 4 checks Imam Anwar mentioned. What if you come from a family filled with drama and toxicity? How do you deal with this when you know you are a good person, but this can scare off potential people? Yeah, I would say this up front. Like, listen, I don't have the best relationship with my family, and I'm learning how to deal with it, but I'm learning how to become, like, be the exception from my family. I'm learning how to do that. And I'm learning how to deal with the drama. So this is how my family is. And anyone who claims they have a perfect family, they're lying. No, everyone has drama. Everyone has extreme drama and toxicity in some way. Not extreme, but like it's no one's perfect. So you have to kind of talk about that in a way where you're taking ownership of what you have about yourself. What can you do, if anything, to reconcile the cultural differences between one another in that one set of parents doesn't approve of different backgrounds and denies the marriage? Yeah, I mean, this unfortunately happens a lot, and this is why it's so important to do this work of making sure there's not going to be conflict. But if we reach to that point and there's literally no other way, and your parents are literally going to decline it, I mean, I wish Imam Anwar was here to ask, like, Islamically, what do we do? But realistically, I mean, if it's time to move past and there's no way to reconcile the cultural differences and no one's approving, then, you know, it is what it is, and it sucks. But some people, you know, don't get their parents' approval and get married anyway. I don't know how they do that, but we'll ask Imam Anwar on that one. So yeah, the key to this one is when you're attached, it's going to be harder. So it's better to rip the Band-Aid off than trying to rip it 2 years from now. And I've seen so many heartbreaks, just people trying to make something work that doesn't fit. It's just, it doesn't work. Just move on. And it's hard. But yeah. If I'm not financially stable at the moment, but I'm emotionally prepared for marriage, is it haram for me to get married? No, it's not haram. I think Imam Anwar, I think he has, like, if someone can remind me of, like, the what is it? Kifaya fard, or one of it is financial maturity. You have to be financial maturity. It's not Islamic requirement, but if the woman is okay with where you're at now, that's fine. And if the parents are okay with it, so that's fine too. It's not really necessarily haram. What if you both want to marry each other, but it's not the right timing because of school, job, families saying not right now? What should you do while you wait for the right time? I would set extreme boundaries. Sorry, I said extreme, but just set boundaries. Like try not to hang out with each other. Say, like, listen, I think we're a good fit, but we cannot be talking to each other. Because it is very fun. It is very, like, nice to have someone to talk to. And when the timing, let's say you're a freshman and you're meeting someone and you can only get married after college, that's going to be a long 4 years of just avoiding each other and stuff like that. So again, main thing, I would avoid not hanging out alone, not making it a relationship, just until you're ready. So whatever that means to you. And it's tough. That's why I say only talk to someone you like if you know you're ready. And if you're not ready, you know, you can keep them in mind, keep a distance, like physically, time wise. And I know, Imam Anwar talked about this, like really if you're not ready, you can't just like hang out and talk. That's the Islamic answer, and I know the reality people still do. So it's putting the haram thing to the side for a minute. It's literally not good for you. Like, you become attached, and if you become attached, and sometimes it's really hard when you've become so attached and lust starts coming in. And the feelings of lust is very strong, and some people say, oh, I'll be strong enough, don't worry about it, but it's not. The most pious of the pious fall into those traps. And the most, like, it just helps to keep a distance. I feel like that. Yeah, anyway. How far should the I can fix them mentality go? Ooh. Yeah, we're not here to fix nobody, but we're here to just be a human being who holds space for them compassionately. You're not fixing anyone. So if someone has anger issues and, you know, it's not too bad, but it's something that's like manageable, you're not fixing them. You're just like, okay, every time you're going through your anger thing, I'm just gonna give you the space you need, and kind of having a protocol, but you're not fixing them. So whatever level they're at, that's what you're accepting. Like, that's what you're marrying. because sometimes if like, oh, it'll get better after marriage, that hopefulness, it's not work. You have to be like, okay, this is where they're at. Am I willing to deal with this, or would I rather be single? That's your answer. Okay, so if whatever level they're at, and if you ask them, okay, I noticed, you have this flaw about you get angry all the time. How is this gonna work? Okay, yeah, I get angry and I'm working on it, but for you, what's your protocol to make sure you're protecting yourself? Or if like, as you're in that in that marriage, things to talk about, right? But you're not here to fix them. That's main thing. Any thoughts on that, actually? I'd like to hear your thoughts. Yes? Good?
I agree.
Agree? Okay, good. No fixing here. We're not supposed to be the other person's therapist. Let's start there. Yeah.
Question. So like, yeah, let's say like this wasn't like a deal breaker, right? And at the previous like session, you guys were talking about assuming that person is never going to change, right? But some people do change, right?
Mhm.
But let's say it's something that that becomes a deal breaker over time, right? Then I guess, for instance, like I'm trying to think of an example. Like there's something with time just kind of gets worse, and you're hoping that it's gonna get fixed, but it doesn't get fixed.
Yeah. Yeah, let's something like anger, like something that just gets worse with time. I don't know, like to me.
Sure, anger could work. I mean, I guess something that to you like is not a deal breaker at the time, but it becomes a deal breaker.
Yeah. Can you give an example?
Your spirituality, deep callings.
Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. So then that reaches a point. At what point am I willing not to tolerate it? Because that's part of your deal breakers. So let's say you meet someone and she prays like 5 times a day, everything's good, and then reaches a point in her life where she just stops praying and she's not Muslim anymore. She literally says, I'm not Muslim anymore.
Yeah.
What do we do?
I'm assuming you get divorced, right?
Yeah, if depending on what your deal breaker is, like, no, I'm not dealing with this. If there's a difference between that and then someone who's just struggling with their deen, like, like, oh, I'm finding it really hard to pray and I just can't, and why? Okay, you kind of work on it. You go through some counseling, you figure it out, but there comes a point where you just won't tolerate it, and then you'll know. Okay, yep. If she reaches this, if she literally stopped trying, I don't want that to be like the mother of my children.
So the fix it mentality is more in relation to the deal breakers that from the beginning, not the things that develop over time.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. If we were to worry about deal breakers in the future, we'll never get married. There's always gonna things that come up, right?
Yeah, I think there's a
Question.
Oh yeah.
You said I don't want this person raising my kids, right? What if you already have kids?
Huh?
What if you already got
Then
kids?
we'll deal with it when the time comes. Problems come up. Well, problems will come up, and that's kind of the couples that I deal with. They are in situations like that where deal breakers are coming up, and they either divorce or figure it out or something. But qadar Allah wa ma sha'a fa'al. You have to do what's happening. Whatever comes up, we'll have to deal with it. But we can't stress out about that. We have to just trust Allah will do what's best for us. And maybe what's best for us is we do get divorced in the future, and we'll deal with it. Yeah. How do you go about general trust issues with men? Growing up, you've only seen toxic men. Even when you meet someone who seems genuine, you know the stories of men who change negatively the second they get married. Listen, there are men who are very, very genuinely so sweet and kind and just an absolute would be a brilliant spouse if we give them the chance. And those people usually don't get a chance because we have this kind of shield in our minds where it's like, oh, all men are like this. When in reality, maybe they went through something that you don't really know what they went through, and they show it as toxicity, and that goes back to the whole ego thing, right? They show up in a way but underneath all of that, when in the real self, they're actually very genuinely like such an amazing man. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot more. I talk to them. I know them. There's a lot of them, and you have to trust that Allah will send you someone who is. If you have to trust that every human, really deep down, is a really good person. If you see things that way, every human does have a good side to them. Let me see what it's like. Let me see if that's something that I can uncover. They are out there. There's a lot of them, and it's a lot more than you think. Even though the media has made it seem that men are not like that. Men are actually incredible, powerful. They have a powerful presence that you would love if you give it the chance. So surround yourself with better examples of this men. And on social media, of women who are married to positive men, it helps to do that. I'll feel as men are more shy, nervous around you, but don't necessarily want to be too friendly out of protecting yourself. How do you balance being open to a relationship but also staying modest and careful? That's a sweet spot. I wish I could answer that, but I think sometimes we have a little too much fear around talking to the opposite gender, where we just shut down. And you can talk to someone with respect, like small talk, like talking with the intention, like, hey, like, how's your career? How's this? How's that? And you know when you're not being modest when you start going into the zone where you would not be proud of if your mom saw you doing this. Right? Like if you started flirting and saying extra things that you're not, that's just, we all know this. Like we're all adults now. So I think know yourself, going back to this, what is you have to define what does it mean to be modest and what does it mean to be not modest. Because that line is kind of blurred nowadays. And we can look at examples of our companions and the women of our of this in the Siras and see how they acted in front of other men and how they would go about things. I'm someone who feels like they need to know everything about the other person. How do I know when I know someone about them, enough about them to make a decision? So I'm someone who feels like they need to know everything about the other person. Whatever fears you have, with just saying the statement, I need to know, you have a fear underneath. What are you afraid of would happen that you would find out? That question you need to ask. Because what is it you need to know? Like, let's say I'm afraid, like, I need to know everything because I'm afraid of, like, what if I'm missing something? Okay, what is that thing that you're worried about missing? What is it actually? I'm worried that, like, what if they manipulate me? I don't know. Okay, you can literally say the words, listen, this has been on my mind. I have this fear that, I might be manipulated because of my past, my whatever. And so I'm just bringing this up to you because this is something I'm afraid of. And then the way they respond is a good way to distinguish, like, oh, they're actually open to growth. And really the key main thing you want to look for is like flexibility, growth. Like, are they willing to mend, or are they not against their own self, but like, are they being like open? Are they being receptive? Or do they just dismiss you and say no? Because that tells you a lot about how the relationship's going to go. Okay. If you're already attached to an outcome, how do you get past it? Being attached to something means you think you know that this is good for you. If you think about anything, if you know, like, let's say if someone has applied to a job or even a college, and they're like, I have to get in here. I have to go here. And if I don't, it's going to be so sad. That in that moment, mentally, spiritually, whatever, you're believing this is what's good for me right now. And so the detachment part is knowing this is, according to my human brain, this is what's good for me, but I know for a fact Allah knows what's best for me. And so it's okay for me to believe that I think this is good for me, but ultimately when I start believing, the core belief for me is Allah knows what's best for me, and if I don't get it, that means Allah has something better for me. And we know that's true. We know that's true with evidence of your past. Every time you look at your past and you see that something didn't work out for you, how was that good for you? And you build evidence of that for yourself. Oh, every time this didn't work, that's why it was good for me. So part of becoming someone who's more detached from the outcome is just practicing that belief over and over again. And it helps to pray istikhara. Just not even pray, like even dua, just dua, Ya Allah, please, if this is not good for me, let it, like, take it away from me. And when you're doing that, you're training your brain to show yourself that I don't know what's best for me. Okay, it's 3 o'clock. Okay, there's like 7 more questions, but let me see here. I'm confused about attraction versus love versus infatuation. Okay, how much do you need to like the other person emotionally before marrying them? I hear of so many people say no to potential people because they don't have a crush on them. Yeah, confused about attraction versus love versus infatuation. A lot of people confuse attachment with love. They are attached to the image that they think they want, and they create this image of like, this is who this person is. And that's kind of infatuation. They make them much better than what they are. And it's kind of inevitable. It's going to happen to everyone. Every time you talk to someone, that infatuation is going to come up. It's part of our biology for some reason. Your brain's going to make them much better than who they are. And you're going to be obsessed in a way. And so, love, it's a tricky one to answer, but love is more about decision. So before marrying them, right? This is what I like. This is my personality with them. So far, I like them. Like I see myself living with someone like this. And I would try to put the infatuation and obsession on the side and see, okay, if 10 years from now, when this infatuation goes away, do I still want to live with this person? Right? This is kind of what you want to think of. You want to think of when 30 years from now, when you're kind of not in this infatuation phase, what do I actually care about? And that helps kind of to make the decision. There's a couple more questions. If you guys are free to leave if you want, or you can stay. Up to you guys. Okay. I told my parents about this course, and now my mother is sending her list of people I should meet with with elevator pitches. However, I found a person that I'm interested in. Is there an appropriate way of mentioning a person I am talking to my parents? Yeah, you can literally say, hey mom, this is really awkward and uncomfortable to bring this up, but I found someone that I like. And if it's awkward and uncomfortable, literally say those words. It helps to kind of break the ice. Like, you know, just say, I found someone I'm interested in, and I like, what do you think is the best way of going about this? And I doubt your mom will say no, it's not allowed. She likes when people open up, or when people open up their parents, right? Okay, should we be waiting until after college to get married? How do we know if we're ready to do this seriously? Financially, just like all the things, you consider that. From what we talked about, are you ready? So like financially, emotionally, all these things. And it helps to talk to someone that you know, or to a professional or someone that can help you determine if you are ready. But mostly I would like for you to train yourself to trust yourself and trust your gut to know, okay, I think I'm ready because I'm ready to deal with these kind of situations, like with conflict, with any emotional baggage that comes up, I can deal with it. Where do you find someone to approach? It's so hard to know what's an appropriate place and time to even approach someone. Yeah. Well, I don't know, if you're at the masjid, I don't know how to see. So depends on the context, but if you're in a social setting and you know the friends or someone around you, I feel like I'm trying to answer this, but I can't answer it directly because it's different for everyone. So I'm trying to be careful here, but if you're just in a social setting and you can just approach them and say, hey, like start with small talk and go up to something that feels like, hey, like, are you interested in, you know, for talking from a guy to a girl, are you interested in getting coffee sometime? And with that, you know, the intention is to get married, but even if you don't say that intention right, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, keep going.
Even if you don't say that intention right away in the beginning, like making sure your intention is clear within you, so that, because maybe the girl's not ready to hear that right now, but like you both know, you're both Muslim, you both go to the masjid, you guys know we don't mess around, right? So yeah, go ahead.
I guess in this question, like an example is like here the assumption is that you don't know the person from the way that the question is worded. So is it better to know the person through time? In a sense, like, okay, like let's say you volunteer on the masjid, or like you do like activities, or you're in MSA, or like you go to lectures, and here and there maybe you share class potentially, or you've met like in like those big events, or is that better, or is that just like point blank going to something like, hey, like, you know, you we've had our small talk, can we like go get some like coffee or something? I mean, I guess
Yeah,
sorry for the
that's why,
humor, and it's
that's
just,
why,
yeah.
that's why I hesitate on answering is because there's no right way.
Right,
Like,
yeah,
there's,
of course. No, I'm just curious.
the only,
like, in both
so the
cases.
only right way is as long as you have the right intention and you approach it however you want to approach it. Okay? Let's not complicate this. And I'm trusting all of your adults who are Muslims who know like what's haram and halal. So, because if I were to say no, this is the only way, everyone's gonna get like frustrated. Like,
But I guess that wasn't necessarily what I was looking for, but I think.
tell me, yeah.
No, it's yeah.
Okay.
It's okay.
But yes, okay, I see what you're saying. You're saying try to get to know them more just by knowing them that like they take the same class, but do I have to get to know them more before asking them?
Yeah, I guess yeah, because like I mean, it is a little like a weird question to just kind of like if you don't know the person,
Yeah.
you know, like.
Yeah. That's why I would start with.
Good stuff to be able to say something.
Right, yeah. That's why I would start with small talk, introducing yourself slowly in some way, being around, and like I said, it's very you have to kind of figure that out. Yeah. Okay. Should we pay attention to their family too? How much should we think about if our families will get along? It's an important question. It's good to think about, I think, because when you're marrying someone, you're also like seeing you're kind of involved with their families as well. So, I would consider like how would this work if you do get to know their family? In what way would it be conflicting? In what way? All these questions. And if you guys Google Imam Majid 100 questions, all of this is covered. Questions are in there about families, how families treat each other, all this stuff. So you kind of have an idea of what to talk about. Can you give an example of what you mean by taking accountability for your thoughts and feelings? Great question. So let's say someone says to me, you're being too emotional. They say that to me. And I get offended. The reason I'm offended is my thought is they're being mean to me. And my feeling is hurt. Okay? Me being aware and self-accountable is, okay, I'm feeling this pain because of how I'm thinking. Let me communicate this. Hey, when you said that thing to me, I felt hurt because it made me feel like, you're being mean to me. Right? You addressed like this is why you're hurt and you're communicating it. That's maturity. That's like the accountability for your thoughts and feelings. And every single thought and feeling you have, every pain, everything you're feeling comes from how you're thinking. So it helps to understand. And that's why it helps to hire a therapist or a coach or someone to help you through that. Because it's hard to and it helps with journaling as well. Journaling really helps with understanding your thoughts and feelings. I'm scared of asking my parents to find someone for me because they might get invested in someone they like for me more than me. Should I leave that option out then and look for someone myself? Up to you. There's no right and wrong way. So if you think you're afraid of that, I would just leave it to be open. Like, okay, let me see whatever comes to me. I'll trust that I'll say yes or no. Yeah. You wouldn't understand because you're a man. How do I debunk this in my head? You wouldn't understand.
I think you sent it for Mama already.
Huh?
She might have been sending it for Mama or.
No, it's in quotes. So, quote, you wouldn't understand this because you're a man, unquote. How do I debunk this in my head?
I think it's a girl asking that question.
It's a what?
It's a
It's a
girl
girl?
who posed that question because she thinks like men don't understand her perspective.
Okay. Yes, I think so too. Yeah.
We don't worry.
Yeah, you wouldn't understand this because you're a man. And so the way I would answer this is, it's true. Sometimes men won't understand what you're going through. And so how can you get someone to understand you, of that part of you, and also be opening? Like men do want to understand you. They want to trying to find a way to get what you're saying. And so, how do I debunk this? I would challenge that thought. You understand because you're a man. Men do understand, and sometimes they don't, and that's okay. But it's not like the truth. They'll never understand. So anytime you have some sort of belief, actually for both things of this is how women are, or this is how men are, you kind of need to challenge it and be like, actually, it's not 100% true. There are men that act this way, and there are men who don't act that way, or women who act this way and women who don't act that way. Okay, seems like, last question. What are your thoughts on two people who are ready to get married, but still finishing college in different cities, so they have to live apart for the first year of marriage? Is that okay, or should they wait? That's fine, right? They're ready to get married, still finishing college. I'm not someone who's like, yes, this is right, this is wrong. It's up to what you value, what all this stuff. So, when it comes to right and wrong, that's imam anwar fiqh in Islam, right? I can't sit here with my own opinion and be like, this is right, this is wrong. Then it's not okay. So, but yes, nothing's wrong with that. Okay, that's it. Any thoughts, questions? Raise your hands, tell me all the things, tell me your thoughts. Yes, okay. Yeah.
Do you want us to reflect on anything for next week?
Do we have a class?
It's in, 21st of April, the next one.
21st of April? Okay, yeah. So,
Next time.
yeah, so,
Post Ramadan.
post-Ramadan, yeah. So we got a lot to, so,
3+3 is 6 weekends.
yeah. So the list I want you to work on is what you want in your life and what you want in a spouse. Get as detailed as you can. As detailed as you can. And don't limit yourself. Just say like, this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want. And then eventually you'll develop a list where you'll figure out what's absolutely necessary and what's not necessary. And the more you talk to people, the more you are ready for marriage and you're going out there, you'll figure out, oh, actually this is important and this is not important. And so all of that is, yeah.
Can you repeat that again, please?
So write out a list of what you want in your life and what you want in your spouse. And when you're creating this list of what you want in your life, figure out how to meet it with what you currently have. Like, does that mean finding a friend who you can have intellectual conversations with, or all these things? You're building a network of what you want. You're building the life of what you would love to have, even if you're not married, so that you can fill your cup. Sounds good? Okay, we're striving for the best of the best, inshallah. We need to do our best to, yes?
But I guess, what's one thing that, like, through the process, that you wish you knew, okay, let me reword that. What I'm saying is, like, reflecting about the process that you went through, right?
Mhm.
What is one thing you wish somebody told you when you were, like, beginning this process?
Yes, that my person is definitely out there. I don't need to stress out. Like, a lot of women and men, everyone stresses out, like, I don't know if it's gonna work out. It's gonna work out. It's gonna work out. And if we just relax and decide that right now we can just like enjoy our life and do what we need to do, and eventually, inshallah, our person will come. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. Any more thoughts, questions? Good. Okay. All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.